Okay, now that we spent a little bit of time talking about how to get on and off your bike, a little bit of time about how to stop your bike, basically how to get your bike started, a little bit about okay, we're down to the part about how we're going to make this thing go. We know a little bit about how to get on the bike and how to start, how to stop the bike. We need to know a little bit about changing gears. And changing gears is a very, very, very important part of riding a bicycle. It's how we can make riding efficient, basically. What it allows us to do is it allows us to change the size of our wheels without actually changing our wheels. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but the reality is, I'll put it up here where you can see, in the old days, you can remember the big old bicycle that had the big, big wheel in the front and the little wheel in the back. Those were called penny farthings. And on a penny bike, you basically have the pedals connected to the wheel. So one revolution of the pedals meant one revolution of the wheel. For a big wheel, that's pretty hard. You had to push pretty hard to be able to turn that wheel over. Now, once you got momentum, once you got out on a flat surface and rolling, you could keep it rolling relatively easily. Going up a hill is pretty tough. If you think about the opposite of that, how about a tricycle? Where, the kids' pedals are connected to the wheel as well, but the wheel is only so big. You can just pedal as fast as you want, you just don't really go anywhere because one revolution equals one turn of the wheel and it just doesn't go very far. We sometimes need that. When we're going up a hill, we need it to be easier to pedal, even though we don't go as far. And when we're going a long way on a flat straightaway, we need for it to be a little harder to pedal so we can go farther. And being able to get out and change the actual wheels of your bike is kind of impossible, but with gears, we can accomplish the same thing. The way this works is pretty simple. You have a crankset on the front, which consists of a couple of chain rings and two crank arms and pedals. You have a cassette on the back, which has a bunch of cogs on it, and the two are connected with a chain. Okay, basically, here's how it works. The big chain ring on the front and the smallest cog on the back, when those two are working together, very, very, very hard to pedal. That's the highest gear you can go on your bike. It makes it really hard to pedal, but you can get a lot of speed doing that way. The smallest chain ring on the front and the biggest cog on the back, very, very, very easy to pedal. That's the lowest gear you can get on your bike. And we need that sometimes great for climbing hills. Everything in between is different combinations of the two. So we can make our wheels a bunch of different sizes, basically. Now, when you're on the big chain ring on the front, you can be on the smallest chain ring on the back, and you can go all the way to about the last two cogs. You can't go much farther than that, because if you do, the chain will do what we call a cross chain. In other words, the angle that the chain is going from the front to the back is such that it's unnecessary wear and tear on both the cogs and on the teeth on the chain ring, but also could cause the chain to actually come off in a situation we call dropping the chain, in which the chain come off the chain ring or the cog and get stuck between your frame and the other moving parts, and sometimes it can break a chain and cause you to fall. Sometimes it's just a nuisance and a hassle to have to get off and put the chain back on. The same thing is true when you're on the small chain ring on the front. You can go from the big chain ring on the back all the way over to about the last two cogs, or the big cog on the back, all the way over to about the last two cogs on the back, and then you would be doing the same thing. The reality is a lot of those gears are just redundant, because the big chain ring halfway through is no different than the small chain ring halfway through. And so you're not going to use a lot of those gears, maybe 6 or 7 gears that you're going to be comfortable with, and you'll move back and forth depending on the terrain you're on. That's pretty much how it works. You pedal, the chain rings turn, the chain makes the cogs turn in the back, and that's how you change the wheels, or the size of the wheels of your bike without actually changing the wheels on your bike. So a very, very good system, and it makes it efficient for us to be able to move the bike, whether we're going uphill or downhill. Now, the other thing you need to know about that is, how do we change? Well, basically, on the front of your bike, I'll put that down here. On the front of the bike, you have 2 levers. Okay, these are our shifters. They're also sometimes our brake levers. Sometimes you'll see levers or shifters where you just turn here. Sometimes you have little handles actually on the down through there. But in general, most of the new modern bikes are going to have shifters that are built into the brake levers. Okay, the shifter on the right controls the rear cog. The shifters on the left controls the front chain rings. And basically what happens is this shifter is connected to what we call a derailleur. Let me move my foot here. The derailleur is a small little unit mounted right here above that chain ring, and when you push on that shifter, it actually moves that derailleur in and out. That's our front derailleur, and it will move the chain between our big and our little chain ring. The shifter on the right does the same thing to what we call a rear derailleur. It moves the rear derailleur in and out, and that will move the chain across those cogs depending on what gear we put it in. So the shifters move the derailleurs, which moves the chain, which changes the wheels, or changes the size of our wheels on a bike, and makes it easier for us to ride more efficiently. Okay, the next thing we need to talk a little bit about is cadence, and that's pretty much how we pedal. Cadence, for a simpler term, is just how many revolutions per minute that the crank arms go around. How many times can you turn the pedals in 1 minute? Okay, cadence, when you're pedaling, when you got it in big gear, like the big chainring on the front and the little cog on the back, real hard to pedal. So hard to pedal that it takes a lot of effort out of your legs. You have to put a lot of force into making the wheel turn over. That causes lactic acid to build up in the legs, and although it's needed, you can only do that for a short period of time. Okay, just the opposite is true when we're in the small chain ring on the front and we're in the biggest cog on the back. Then the pedals are basically turning over so fast that it's just like you're bouncing and wobbling and moving all over your bike. Not such a good deal either. Much easier on the legs, requires a lot less effort for us to turn the pedals over. But if we're bouncing up and down, there's a lot of movement, excess movement that we don't need, and that's a waste of energy in itself. So basically what we want to do is find a cadence that allows us to sit on the bike, be as efficient as we can possibly be, so we're not wearing our legs out, we can go the longest period of time with the energy that we have. For the average person, that's between 80 and 100 revolutions per minute. Probably closer to the mid to high 80s than it would be the hundreds, okay? If you're pedaling really, really slow in that big gear, you're probably 40, 50, maybe even 60, revolutions per minute. If you get the little chain ring on the front and the big cog on the back, 120 revolutions per minute. Not necessarily what we want to do. We want to try to stay somewhere in the middle, so maybe 85 to 90, right in that area is probably going to be about the best you can do. That will keep you pedaling efficiently, moving your bike forward with the least amount of effort, not building up a whole bunch of lactic acid in your legs. And what you try to do with that cadence is you try to change gears according to the terrain. For example, if I start going up a hill, even though I'm at 85 RPMs, all of a sudden going up that hill, I can't pedal at 85. So what I do is I go to a lower gear. By going to a lower gear, it allows me to pedal a little faster and get my cadence back up to 85. If I'm going downhill all of a sudden, it's not very hard to pedal, so I need to go to a higher gear, a little harder gear, so I can slow my cadence back down to 85. And that basically is how you ride a bike, using your cadence. Everybody needs a cadence meter on their bike because that's the easiest way for you to know. Once you get used to riding with a cadence meter after a while, you kind of get the feeling, you kind of pretty much know how fast you're spinning.